to Planetterrian Daily, episode 86. It's June 11th, 2026. Some interesting findings to cover today. Higher vitamin C levels track with larger gray matter volume and stronger brain network connectivity in adults over 64. Researchers identified falling phosphatidylcholine levels as a driver of mitochondrial dysfunction in aging cells. Supplementing the lipid in model organisms restored youthful respiration and membrane potential. The work ties a single membrane component to the energy loss long observed in older tissues. Because the change is reversible in these systems, the pathway offers a concrete target for further testing. Human trials have not yet begun. The same membrane lipid principle appears in observational human data on another nutrient that supports brain structure. The phosphatidylcholine finding offers a direct molecular handle on mitochondrial aging. Restoring this lipid improved respiration in older model organisms without altering nuclear DNA. The result sits within ongoing work on membrane lipids as modifiable targets in cellular aging. Next, researchers need to determine whether oral or targeted delivery can raise organ-specific levels in mammals. If successful, it would give a measurable intermediate endpoint for human trials focused on energy metabolism rather than broad lifespan claims. Most people assume mitochondria simply wear out with time like an old battery that cannot hold charge. In reality, a specific drop in the membrane lipid phosphatidylcholine disrupts electron transport chain efficiency long before wholesale organelle failure occurs. Right now, as you sit listening, your muscle and brain cells are adjusting membrane composition in response to nutrient availability and oxidative stress. Studies in aging models show that restoring phosphatidylcholine can return respiratory rates to levels seen in younger tissues. One memorable detail is that the change often appears well before overt disease symptoms, suggesting an early window for intervention. A practical step is to watch for upcoming human studies that measure phosphatidylcholine levels alongside functional outcomes such as VO2 max or cognitive testing, rather than relying on blood NAD alone. In 2000, 44 adults over age 64, higher circulating vitamin C corresponded to larger gray matter volumes and tighter functional connections in the default mode network. The network supports attention and autobiographical memory, both vulnerable in aging. The observational design cannot prove causation, yet the association persisted after adjustment for diet quality and education. Researchers plan longitudinal follow-up to test whether raising vitamin C intake slows network decline. Plasma measurements came from a single fasting sample per participant. University of Queensland researchers tracked sulfur movement through agricultural soils in a multi-year field study. Sulfur that remains in organic forms stays available to plants longer, while inorganic fractions leach or bind tightly to minerals. The work shows that fertilizer timing and soil organic matter content directly control how much sulfur reaches roots season after season. Farmers can adjust application methods to keep soils productive without excess inputs. Follow-up trials will test whether these patterns hold across different crop rotations and rainfall zones. Source: phys.org. Analysis of 264,000 pregnancies over 20 years found no elevated risk of major congenital anomalies after exposure to paracetamol or common NSAIDs. The study drew on linked prescription and birth registry data across multiple health systems. Researchers compared exposed and unexposed pregnancies while controlling for maternal age, smoking, and other medications. Results align with earlier, smaller studies, but carry greater statistical power. Regulators and clinicians can use the data when updating prenatal pain management guidance. Source: reddit.com/r/science. Now, shifting to a very different area of research. Penn State researchers followed children whose parents received coaching and support materials during preschool. 7 years later, the children displayed fewer conduct problems and higher academic skills than controls. The randomized design included families from varied income levels. Effects appeared in both teacher ratings and standardized testing. The team is now examining whether booster sessions in later grades extend the benefits. On a different note, UCL researchers pooled data from multiple UK cohorts to examine outcomes after parental smacking. Children exposed to physical punishment showed higher rates of conduct problems in middle school and lower exam scores years later. The associations remained after statistical control for family income and parental mental health. The team argues that legislative bans in England and Northern Ireland would align policy with existing evidence. No threshold of mild punishment escaped the negative correlations. Next up, UC Berkeley and UCSF engineers repurposed a bacterial CRISPR enzyme into a precise DNA-destroying tool. Cas12a2 detects cancer-specific mutations and then cuts the entire genome inside those cells, triggering death. In cell and animal models, the approach left non-mutated cells intact. The study appears in Nature. Next steps include packaging the system for delivery and testing in additional tumor types. Now, moving to imaging technology. A new topographic imaging method measures microscopic surface texture without touching the artwork. Authentic Van Gogh canvases displayed consistent brushstroke micro-relief patterns that forgeries lacked. The peer-reviewed study tested the technique on known originals and confirmed fakes. Museums could deploy portable scanners during acquisitions or insurance valuations. Further validation on other artists is already underway. From human development, we turn to climate biology. Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria and Deakin University researchers tested germination of Victorian alpine species under simulated future climates. Seeds failed to sprout when winter chilling or spring warming cues were altered, even when moisture remained adequate. The findings indicate that warming temperatures may desynchronize the seasonal signals these plants rely on. Several species showed narrow thermal windows, raising extinction risk for high elevation populations. Seed bank managers are now testing whether assisted migration or queue manipulation can improve recruitment. The pathogen that causes sporotrichosis was detected in internal organs of wild mammals in a Brazilian survey. Previously considered mainly a cat-to-cat and cat-to-human disease, the fungus now appears to circulate in sylvatic cycles. The March Mycopathologia paper documents lesions and systemic spread in non-domestic hosts. Wildlife health monitoring may need to expand to track spillover risk. Domestic cat vaccination strategies could be affected if reservoirs persist in nature. Source: phys.org. A Journal of Medical Internet Research trial tested digital interventions that strengthen identification with one's future self. Students who completed the exercises showed measurable gains in goal-directed planning and academic motivation 6 months later. The effect size held across socioeconomic groups. Researchers suggest the approach could be embedded in school or workplace wellness platforms. Longer follow-up is planned to check durability beyond 1 year. Source: phys.org. University of Miami researchers analyzed SEC filings after the 2020 Human Capital Disclosure Rule took effect. Companies began highlighting employee development programs and diversity metrics more prominently in recruiting materials. The shift was strongest among firms competing for technical roles. The study shows regulation aimed at investors can indirectly change labor market behavior. Further work will track whether the disclosures improve actual retention or only messaging. Source: phys.org. Keep an eye on new research into virtual future self exercises that showed lasting gains in motivation 6 months later. That covers today's science and health news. Share this with someone who's curious about the latest research. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. See you next time. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Models and Agents for Beginners a listen. Artificial intelligence explained simply for beginners and curious teens. You can explore the whole lineup at neuranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.